What's up, Copy Squad? It's your boy, Kyle Milligan, coming to you live from the meditation zone. I'm back in my soundproof box. We're going to look at some copy again. And I think what we're going to do is kind of pick up where we left off yesterday with the Money Map promo about IPOs, okay? Last we talked about, Danny said, Mike said, your track record is nothing short of astounding, and this market could not be hotter. Danny said, you're absolutely right about that, Mike. This market could not be hotter. Just look at the kinds of returns people have been seeing. Emerald Health went from 40 cents on IPO day to 9.68 in January. We talked about that before because we talked about this length of time, 3 years. That's a 2,300% gain. Cannabis went from 14 cents to 4.18, 2,700% gain. United Cannabis went from 25 cents to 11.45 6 months later. Basically, big money fast. Whenever they are talking about something that occurs in a rapid amount of time, they label it. They say 6 months later. All right, that's a 44.80 gain. It's the only time in history you can get in for pennies a share and make tens of thousands of dollars. So Mike says, so essentially what they're doing here is they're answering the question, why should I care about IPOs? Like, why should I do it now, right? And I think one of the cool things that they did here, we're going to label this with some new, easy, safe, and big. When you see something like this is the only time in history, and you're kind of creating that FOMO. Whenever you're creating FOMO, you're talking about how big this opportunity is. Like, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I've gotten some questions about big, or I get questions about new, easy, safe, and big all the time, right? But one of the ones is like, if this has been out for months, then how is it new? New just means it's a new opportunity that you haven't tried before. It doesn't necessarily mean it came out an hour ago. And big doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be $1 million. Big is an emotion. We're communicating to the emotional center of the brain. We got to let go of this literal reading comprehension sort of way of viewing the words that are written on the page. What is it communicating? It's communicating that this is a big opportunity. This is something that you won't have another shot at. All right? It doesn't necessarily have to be $10 million. Just the fact that this is the only one, it's a big deal. Like, there is no other chance. If you ever want to experience something like this, you got to get in now. That's what they're doing here. All right, Mike says, and Danny, when we talked earlier, you told me you think all this is just a drop in the bucket compared to what's coming, right? Just a drop in the bucket. It's going to be big. So tell me, for folks who aren't familiar with this, what exactly is an IPO? And what is it about cannabis that makes these IPOs such a unique opportunity right now, right? It's unique. And it's urgent. It's immediate. That's easy, Mike. IPO stands for Initial Public Offering. It's when a company's stock first goes to sale in the public market. For most of the time, successful IPOs, the cheapest price you'll ever pay to own an up-and-coming landmark company, it's the cheapest price you'll ever pay. Okay? So you get it for pennies in the dollar, right? So essentially when you say it most of the time, like this is what usually happens, we're kind of creating that element of safety. Like, this is the best time to get in because it's kind of been proven for most successful IPOs. So imagine if you could find a red-hot business, it's rapidly growing, it has 5 million person customer base and 70% profit margins. It's a dream investment. Okay, so this is kind of like setting up some criteria. I feel like this will come to be a thing. And why would you list all these specific criteria if you're not going to have something like that in just a second? Just now, imagine buying into that company at 10 cents instead of $10 a year later. That's why I get so excited for IPOs, because that's the kind of thing you can see. Just look at Kronos. So we have a piece of proof. They're one of the biggest growers on earth. We all know Kronos had a great year. I didn't know that. They uplisted to the NESB at 7.62 cents a share in February, then hit a high of 15.3 in September. It's 100%. That's a 100% gain. 10,000 would have become 20,000. That alone is fantastic. But if you had bought in when they first IPO'd, you could have gotten in at just 16 cents a share. $10,000 would turn into more than $956,000. Okay, these are the kinds of claims that we got to see for a back-end promo. Big money. I don't think they put anything about the time frame. Because they said last year, right? This is 1 year. This is just last year. But when they first IPO'd, like when was that, huh? Could have been 50 years ago. We don't know. Doesn't matter, I guess. See 20 turning 956. That's enticing stuff. So getting in at the IPO would have made you 40 times more money than getting in later on. Again, what we're talking about here is why you should care about IPOs. And there are dozens of more examples just like that. Okay, so what we're talking about here is we're still proving the point that you should care about IPOs. Like, you should care. Not only should you care, like, IPOs rock. That's what they're trying to prove. They're trying to prove that this is the awesome thing to do. IPOs rock. They make you a lot of money. All right? So here comes proof number 2. All right? So, proof number 2. Look at Aphria. They're a medical marijuana company based in Leamington, Canada. Over the last year, Aphria went from a low of $7.90 to over $24. That's 213% gain. Not too shabby. But in the first 2 days after they IPO'd, you could have gotten in for 66 cents. Who wouldn't want to do that? Put in $2,000 at that price, and this year you could have walked away with $75,000. Again, we say $2,000 at that price. The first 2 days after they IPO'd, this year you could have walked away. We don't know when that was. It could have been 50 years, but they didn't mention that. All they mentioned was these dates, right? So over the last year, it did that. And then they switched gears. That's a pretty cool, let's call this like a timeline hack, right? I'm going to name that right here. That might be what we learn in this one. They establish a timeline first. Let's say we're establish a short-term example first, right? First, drop the short-term example. Compare to overall gain. Okay, compare to bigger overall gains. 3. This is my favorite part, is ignore time frame. There you go. That's the timeline hack. You've heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. That's copywriting Jedi trick. That is what they do, though. I mean, look, medical marijuana over the last year, that's step 1, right? Step 1, over the last year, it made a bunch of money. All right, not too shabby. But in the first 2 days at IPO, you can went from 60 cents. That's $2,000. This year, you can make $75,000. All right, so that's 2 and 3. Steps 2 and steps 3 right there. Establish an overall gain and ignore the time frame. Next, Namaste Technology IPO'd for 11 cents a share. Now they've traded as high as $4.40. That's a 3,900% gain, 40 times your money. Putting in $1,500 on IPO day would have made you $60,000. So on this one, they actually show you the time frame, but they don't necessarily speak it, right? $1,500 on IPO day would have made you $60,000. Look at Abatis Bioceuticals out of Vancouver. They're a consulting firm. They provide logistics support for cannabis companies. From last October to this year's high, you could have seen a 564% gain investing in Abatis. I'll show you another hack here. So from last October to this year's high. So all this is kind of like, this is not very, this isn't, I wouldn't call it clever. This is pretty common. This is what's called cherry picking. So what they probably did is they looked at the stock chart. They found like a really low period, which would be last October. Why else would they care about last October, right? Is there anything else about last October? Yes, they probably picked like a record low day or something, like a flash crash or something happened where the stock drops. And then they said to this year's high, right? So perhaps like this year in, February, it shot way up. And now we're in April and it's back down. This is just cherry picking. Could have seen a 564% gain investing in Abatis. That's fantastic by any measure. Absolutely. But after they IPO'd, Abatis traded for less than a penny a share. Okay, you're kidding me. Less than a penny? I am completely serious. A $2,500 stake could have bought you 500,000 shares of Abatis stock. 500,000 shares for $2,500. Think about what it means to buy into a company at that price. When Abatis hit $2.65 a share, your stake would have been worth more than $1.3 million. All right, cool. I think it's also important to note, so this is big. Let's look at the proof really quick in the big picture. So we've looked line by line, right? Let's look at big picture, some trends in the writing. Coming up, coming up, coming up, coming up. So where's the first graph? So here's the claim, right? And we know, okay, so here's how it goes, right? Let me show you the objection claim proof benefit over here. So you've got your objection claim proof, usually in multiples of 3, and then the benefit. which will be something like, imagine if that were your dollars. So the objection up here, which is inferred, right? Nobody said it, but you infer, why do I care about IPOs? Like, why not just invest in some other thing? Why not the alternative? Okay, so no matter what you're selling, you'll always have to answer, why not the alternative? Right? So why should I do this instead of something else? So this is the only time in history that you can do this. That's why. That's what they're claiming, right? So they're saying this is the only time in history that you can do this. Get in for pennies on the dollar. So that was the claim. Pennies a share and make tens of thousands. So what did they do? They found examples of pennies for a share that makes tens of thousands of dollars. But notice these gains are 100% here. Okay, moving along. 213% here. Moving along. 3,900% here. Moving along. And this one is 1.3 million. Whoops. Come here, you little bugger. 1.3 million. And essentially what they're doing is the magic show must get better. That's what we call it. Magic show must get better. And essentially, as you're showing proof, it should get more exciting as it goes. Just like a magic show, just like a fireworks show. So you can't just, you can't go back. You don't want to go backwards. This is trending upwards and upwards and upwards to bigger and bigger windfalls. 60,000 there. 2,000 would have brought you 75. 1,500 would have made you 60. So smaller investment, pretty much equal payout. 10,000 became 20,000, right? So the payouts just get more and more significant. You can put in less, get the same amount until you're down to $2,500 makes you a millionaire, right? And they probably picked $2,500 because it was the number, nice round number, to get you above 1 million. So they could say, there it is. So they could say this exact line. So imagine investing $2,500 on a single stock and retiring a millionaire. That's just a powerful line that you find in most financial promos. Is they're going to want to at some point say something like, imagine being a millionaire, and show you an example of a time that you could have become a millionaire. All right. So the magic show must get better. The fireworks show must get better. Like, you start off with sparklers and snakes, and then you get to better and better stuff as you go along. All right. All right, I think that's going to do it for this one. I think what we learned in this one is the timeline hack, which I just made up, but I think it's like the funniest idea ever. Basically, establish a short-term example, and then just go ahead and talk about the big picture that makes the most money. And while doing so, ignore the overall timeline. I think that was really funny. So yeah, that's one thing we learned. The second thing we learned is the magic show must get better. So we've got 2 lessons in this one. I hope you found them useful. If you want to learn how to write words that really make you rich, if you want to master the secret language of sales that speaks directly to the emotional center of the brain, check out my book, Take Their Money. It's at kylethewriter.com/book. All right, thanks for tuning in. Peace out. Copy Squad.